So with no more further ado, what is my tip number one? So tip number one is you set the tone. And when I say you, I'm referring to you as the business owner. Okay. You lead by example. This is all about how you portray yourself within your organization. Everyone's looking to you to lead. And I know that you've sort of got busy jobs and roles, but it's so important for you not to get sort of wrapped up in your ivory towers. I have made a few sort of notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking to do. So you leading by example. So how do you do this? Well, you may have a multi-sited facility. So when was the last time you stepped out of head office and went to a sort of sub branch or a different store? How often do you get out there and actually talk to the people on the ground, if you like, about what they're up to? When was the last time you jumped in the car with the sales rep and went out on the road? All of these things, being approachable, it's that cliche of an open door policy, but the door shouldn't be open for people to walk in and talk to you. The door should be open for you to get out and talk to everybody within your organization. There's that sort of old adage that you have 2 ears, or if you're from Wales, years, and 1 mouth, and you should use them in that sort of in that ratio. Start listening to what your teams are saying to you. Really start understanding how the vibes are within your organization, and then you can start to sort of do something about it. So be approachable, make some time, think about the communications and how you communicate with your team. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did send out some communications? Have you ever? Generally, in larger organizations, you'll have an annual launch where, maybe to some sort of fanfare, you roll out the red carpet and share with the group what the next year's goals are. And those goals are often aligned with, performance related stuff like bonuses. Too often than not, those things are done in isolation and as a one-off. So I would suggest to you to regularly communicate with your staff exactly what is going on. Maybe you should start a new thing within your organization. Maybe you have a coffee with the crew. Don't be afraid to get out there and speak to people underneath the sort of the senior management team that so many people tend to sort of isolate themselves with. Really, get out there, talk to the receptionist, talk to the people on the ground, the people that are doing the work, and ask them their opinions. And then if they've got some good ideas, which I'm sure they have, then look to how you can implement them or share them with the team or share them with the senior management team. Being a bit more inclusive, this will really help change the culture of the company. So there we go. One other tip, if you like, is there will be a key noisemaker within your organization, or noisemakers. They're generally the person that if you want to keep a secret, you definitely don't tell them. But there will be people, and you will be aware of who they are, and pull your enemy closer. Make sure you approach them first. Okay, if they talk the loudest, then make sure that you're controlling the narrative. I don't like that word, but influencing the narrative by making sure that they're hearing things from the horse's mouth. Okay, so let's not forget, if you're the boss, you set the tone. That is tip number one. Tip number two: inform, remind, and educate. So this is the tip, if you like, that may cost you some money to implement. But you've got these goals, like I referred to earlier on. Like, how often have you relayed these to the team? More importantly, when was the last time you updated them as to how the company is performing versus those goals? So if you do this once a year sort of fanfare, make sure each quarter that you are reminding people of what the goals were, because it's no good at the end of the year telling people that they didn't hit their goal and that they're not going to get bonus, right? So make sure that you are leading from the front and informing people on a regular basis about where the company is versus plan. Maybe you'll share with them your company values or remind them of your company values at that time. Yeah, you have got company values, right? Now, if you haven't, then you need to, right? Because you've got to be sharing what you stand for with your crew and with your team. So when you're informing people and reminding people, remind them of your brand values, remind them what you stand for. Okay, do this on a regular basis. Now, you can go about creating some kind of newsletter, which will help remind people again, maybe about your products and services. It doesn't have to be about, not everything is about sort of you, if you like. Marketing your company to your staff is how you should look upon this opportunity. Educating your staff, right? Giving them the tools to do their job. And I would suggest if you've got a small amount of marketing budget, you might be better off not spending that small amount marketing externally, because very often, unless you spend a considerable amount of money, the money doesn't really penetrate and doesn't give you any benefit. So maybe take that money and invest it in the education and the training of your staff. I have heard business owners say, "Well, why should I? Why should I train my staff? They're only going to leave." Well, do you know what? Maybe they're leaving because you've got the wrong attitude and you've got the wrong culture within your organization, right? Maybe you need to sort of start looking at why they're leaving versus the fact that you don't feel like educating them is a worthwhile thing. Look at some expert external training to come in and help you upskill your workforce. It is extremely important. Maybe you should think about bringing a coach into your organization. I'm going to say, to start off with, if you haven't got a coach as a business leader, I suggest that you do get one. But maybe you put something in place in the first instance for the senior management team to help them, because let's face it, right? We've all got our own issues. We've all got our own demons, but supplying the facility to have somebody for your team to talk to, it can make a massive difference to morale in general. Okay, and it all adds to creating a much better culture internally. It's a big sort of it's a big signal that you really do care about the well-being, not just the well-being of your staff while they're working, but their mental well-being around their personal life too. So think about that. Think about maybe getting up close and personal within your newsletter style. So maybe you can do a live Q&A if you're brave enough, right? Invite the staff to ask you the questions live on air, or maybe get them to interview you with their own set of questions and republish that either in a video or via a newsletter with a transcript. Get more involved. So you're informing, you're reminding them of where the plan is, and then you're helping educate them. Tip number 2. Right, what about tip number 3, my last tip, and I think possibly the most important one. This is all about recruiting based on your values. Now, I said to you earlier, if you haven't identified your values, then you should. But this is my biggest tip to creating a positive culture internally, and that is recruiting your staff based on your values. And I don't mean this in isolation, right? It needs to be well balanced, but I would suggest to you that the majority of organizations, they put out a job description. There's a very small section about the company and what it stands for and what it does. And then there's an extremely long list of all of the other attributes and skills that the candidates need to have. I would go as far as to say, turn that on its head. Make 3/4 of your job description about the company and the values and what it stands for and the culture, if you like, and the type of person that you're looking to introduce into that. Versus the other quarter or third or whatever the maths was, 2/3, 1/3, 3/4, quarter. Make the majority of it about the values, and then make the last bit about the skills and the skill sets that your candidates need to have. Now, I'm being quite simplistic. I'm trying to get this across in a sort of a punchy 1, 2, 3 format. It goes a long way to think about, how you psychometric test in terms of making sure that you've got a good sort of spread of skill set. Of course, these all sort of go hand in hand, but fundamentally, maybe start referring a little bit more back to that sort of gut feel as to employing someone based on the fact that you feel that actually they represent what your company stands for a little bit closer. Maybe you start giving them a task within interview, to sort of understand where their values or where their barometer stands. Maybe you give them a group of words and ask them to identify the values that they align with. Yeah. So there we go. There's my top 3 tips, all done in 17 minutes and 20 some seconds. So as a recap, they are: you set the tone. You're in charge. You need to lead from the front. Get out there. Talk to your workforce. Be approachable. Make sure that you listen more than you talk, and start to sort of create that sort of positive feedback loop where you're listening to what your staff have got to say, and then, as long as it's sensible and it's worth doing, make sure you sort of implement that, but do it on a regular basis. Inform, remind, educate. Think of that as like a little sort of loop again, where you do this on a regular basis. And lastly, recruit based on your values. Now, I've tried to keep these as sort of general. I didn't want them to appear specific to any industry, and I wanted them to be achievable to any company, dependent on, and so that it wasn't dependent on what type of budget that you had.